We can now look at a song with vocals. And obviously here, the strings have to enhance and support the arrangement without clashing or getting in the way of the vocals. Let's have a listen to this song.
You keep me in your heart, don't let it fade away. We'll never be apart. If only I could stay, I would wait till tomorrow. But earlier today, there will be no more sorrow. If only I could stay.
The song was created by taking a vocal track and creating an arrangement underneath it. The mid-range of this song is lacking something, and that is what we will bring to it with the strings. We also want to create a sense of growth or evolution during the song with the strings. This will create a sense of dynamic that is so important in music. We're going to play a slow and calm phrase using the Cine Samples legato strings. To start with, we're going to play a unisono line. This is the kind of line that could be played by a solo cello. So let's record that first line.
You keep me in your heart, don't let it fade away. We'll never be apart. If only
I'll erase the note that was played by mistake.
you keep me in your heart, don't let it fade away. We'll never be apart. If only I could stay, I would wait till tomorrow. But earlier today, there will be no more sorrow. If only I could stay.
After this section, the strings evolve upwards somewhat. And after that section, we move to a chordal section. To be honest, it is easier for me to record the whole section in one go, as I have to control the modulation wheel. And if I record each section separately, I have no sense of flow. So I'll record the whole string section in one go.
You keep me in your heart, don't let it fade away. We'll never be apart. If only I could stay, I would wait till tomorrow. But earlier today, there will be no more sorrow. If only I could stay.
So now let's look at what I have just recorded in the editor. Once again, we can see clearly what happens by looking at the editor. And about 2/3 of the way through, we can see that we reach a high point with the strings before they drop back down to the ending. We can also see that I was not controlling the modulation wheel at this time, due to the fact that I was playing with both hands. Of course, I have the possibility of playing the modulation wheel afterwards, if need be. So now let's listen to this string section in solo. We have a couple of rogue notes here that I will delete. And then I'll simply re-record the modulation wheel over this section. When overwriting modulation or control data, you can create large jumps in that data. We can see this here. In this example, the best thing would be to simply start from the beginning and re-record the modulation wheel data for the entire section. So that's what I'll do now.
You keep me in your heart, don't let it fade away. We'll never be apart. If only I could stay, I would wait till tomorrow. But earlier today, there will be no more sorrow. If only I could stay.
So for this example, that worked exceptionally well, I think. I achieved what I wanted to achieve, in that the dynamics were being re-recorded using the modulation wheel. Of course, you could use an expression pedal to record this data whilst using both hands to play the music, but that would require a certain amount of practice, and it's not quite as accurate, and harder to control, and in general most people would choose to use the modulation wheel for this task. Let's listen again, and we can see just how the dynamics are creating the movement needed.
If only I could stay, I would wait till tomorrow. But earlier today, there will be no more sorrow. If only I could stay.
Another thing that I would do in this situation is add a leading voice. I would do this on a separate track, but I'll use the same library, and I'll play along to what was created earlier. At this point, I would usually transcribe what I have tried previously to get an idea of what I could play, but in this case I'll simply play along to find what I want to record. I'll leave the beginning section open.
Keep me in your heart, don't let it fade away. We'll never be apart. If only I could stay, I would wait till tomorrow. But earlier today, there will be no more sorrow. If only I could stay.
At the beginning of my new section, I play these descending notes, and I want to keep these, but if we look in my original track, I also played those notes. The solution to this is that I will delete them from my original recording and keep the ones in the new track, as I can then control the level or dynamics better. Of course, I don't want to erase certain notes like the one I just erased by mistake. So I'll take care to select exactly the 4 notes I do want to erase. Now I'll erase the second track and play it in again. I now know what I want to achieve, so I'll be able to perform it somewhat better. I'd like to point out at this point that I would usually do these recordings using speakers or studio monitors rather than headphones, as the room gives a certain ambience when playing and helps with deciding levels and dynamics. Working in headphones is something of a challenge, especially when dealing with the levels of instruments. So now I'll record that section again and continue on until the end of this example.
We'll never be apart. If only I could stay, I would wait till tomorrow.
That wasn't perfect, but still, we'll go to the editor and look at it in some detail. The last note of the initial descending line is somewhat too short. And I'll also edit the dynamics, as it didn't sound quite right to me. Then I'll also change the dynamics of the ascending line, so that they sweep up more smoothly. In context, they may be somewhat too quiet, but we'll have to check that later. Just after this section, we have these 3 short notes that sweep down to the F note. This is quite subtle, but something that I would use quite often in this style of music. Of course, there are samples to create this effect too, but it's quite subtle, and this will work fine in our example. One thing to be aware of is that if you are using the same library for 2 different tracks, then make sure you do not have identical notes played at the same time. This can lead to the problem we've mentioned many times, of the note phasing and sounding extremely unnatural. Now let's listen in context.
If only I could stay, I would wait till tomorrow.
The ascending line that we edited is very subtle.
I would wait till
and so we can compare it to a slightly louder version by adjusting the controller data. Now we can hear it more, but it also jumps out somewhat and doesn't sit quite as well.
I would wait, I would wait, I would wait till tomorrow, but earlier today, there were
So the question is, which do you prefer and which works better? In our case, I think the original version fits in more naturally. I'd also like to point something out in this section. Each of our instruments is playing a unisono line, and each one has a clearly legato passage. To create the desired effect of each line being noticeable and creating the desired effect, I will probably have to go in and edit some of the dynamics. Having edited them, we can hear a different effect. So now we can listen from the beginning to the whole section.
You keep me in your heart, don't let it fade away. We'll never be apart. If only I could stay, I would wait till tomorrow, but earlier today, there will be no more sorrow. If only I could stay.
So hopefully this shows that just with these 2 instruments, we can create quite a lot of movement within our arrangement. The arrangement is fairly static as far as range goes. Even the vocals sit in a very limited range. But we have added harmonic movement that clearly enhances the song and its atmosphere.